What an interesting decade this has been for animation. There are some amazing things on the television, streaming, independent projects online, but the main contender here is on the big screen. Cinematic, theatrical, seeing what these big studios can provide. A lot of them were great, and a lot of them weren't. Now, the previous decade had established the dominance of computer animated movies, with Pixar leading the charge. They launched a new trend that effectively shut down mainstream 2D animated movies, aka Disney. But things were different in this decade. The balance of power shifted, and Pixar was no longer the undisputed champion of the industry. From a critical point of view, Pixar didn't do so well this decade when you compare it to the previous one. Now, that's not to say they didn't have some heavy hitters, but this was a decade of sequels and some original ideas that weren't hitting as hard as before. For Disney, they got back on their feet and took a chapter out of Pixar's playbook while also combining it with their Princess brand. The results? Off the charts. But unfortunately, they also started to release these live-action animated films that make my skin crawl. You. What even are you? Live action? Animated? A wolf in sheep's clothing, no doubt.
Help me! The king!
For DreamWorks, they had their high points and their low points. They were also bought by Universal, which is somewhat concerning. Illumination was Illumination, and Blue Sky stood awkwardly in a corner, not really sure what they were doing. And then were bought by Disney. Outside of the big five, there were plenty of smaller studios across the world that got their start. More competition, more ideas, more diversity, and that's always a good thing. But here are my top 5 personal favorite animated films from this past decade. Again, personal, subjective. I'm already sure that many of you won't agree, and that's okay. You can be wrong. Just kidding. Post in the comments what you think are the best. By the way, this will not include anime because, just like before, it could be its own list. Alright, number 5. Alright, off the bat, we have a tie, which sounds weird, but hear me out. Rango and the Lego Movie. And I will explain why. Both of these films have an incredible narrative in their own right. Both of these films have their own aesthetic in their own right. Both of these films are about characters finding themselves in the bigger picture of life. So in that regard, despite how different these two movies look, I see a lot of similarities. And I, honest to God, can't pick one over the other. I think they're both fantastic. Like, I was trying to see which one of these should go into the honorable mentions, but I can't do it. I legitimately cannot put one down. Let's talk about Rango for a second. Rango is a film that was made by Paramount and Nickelodeon and was released in 2011. I did not like it at first. I thought it was dumb. The fart jokes in the film really put me off. They still do, but I really missed the big picture of the film because I think I wasn't quite there yet with understanding it. I know that sounds weird. I was in a bad mindset when I first watched it, left a bad taste in my mouth. I thought it looked ugly with the characters. I thought it was trying to be quirky in an uncharming way, and I just resented it. But I watched the film recently, like about 2 years ago, and I was completely changed. So just so you all know, I am a sucker for the Western cowboy genre. It's one that's kind of neglected. It's also very specific when it comes to genres, and you don't really see it brought up that much anymore, especially with animation. So seeing that in Rango was refreshing. It's also great seeing this stylized universe of these anthropomorphic animals living in a town beneath the noses of humans on the outskirts of Las Vegas, how they embrace this spaghetti western style to their setting. The animals are ugly. I still see that from my first viewing. I still believe that, except this time I embrace it. The roughness of the characters, of how gross and gritty they are. These are animals that have had it rough. They have no water. They've been kicked around the dirt. It's been a rough life. So of course they're gonna look this way. You got this stranger, Rango, an actor or an aspiring actor who tries to play these roles, finds himself in this town, figures it's a good time to be an actor and pretend that he's a sheriff. I love that. He's a riffraff. He has no place there, but he's so convincing with his acting that people believe him. That's a really cool story. I like that. He's just this hack fraud, playing a role, getting people's hopes up, getting lucky, falling down, hitting, I guess, what's that old term? Failing upwards? That's Rango as a character. And then you got this moment where people find out that I'm probably talking too much of the plot and revealing too much, but just this moment of him coming to terms with who he is, how he's grown, how he can actually be what he wants to be, and he doesn't have to pretend. I just love it. It's a great Western, and it's a very unique take on the genre, combining it with animation as well. Also, Rattlesnake Jake is one of the coolest villains ever. I love him. I think he's so well designed. I forget the name of the actor, but it was like Davy Jones who voiced him. Oh, I just realized Davy Jones, Johnny Depp, Pirates of the Caribbean, whatever. Just overall, a film that has a wonderful story with these themes of pretending you belong and trying to be what you're not, but then coming face to face with it. And then just seeing the Western genre represented in animation, no less, in a unique, refreshing way makes Rango truly stand out. I was wrong about it early on in my life. I see now that I was wrong, and now I absolutely love it. Lego Movie is right up there with it. Lego Movie is one of the most surprising animated films from this past decade, and I'll tell you why. Everybody watching this video, I don't even care if you're saying, well, I had hopes for it. Shut up, you did not. Nobody, literally nobody, thought that this film was going to be more than just a commercial. Man, were we surprised. Okay, I'm sure there's some folks who are watching saying, I was not surprised, I had faith. Cool, I get it, you've got your third eye open, whatever. So I think the first thing that surprised me the most about this film was, again, it wasn't a commercial. It actually had heart, it had a story, it had a setting, it had a twist, it had a narrative of falling into the background of life, but wanting to be more, and in that pursuit, realizing that anybody can be special in their own way. And I know that sounds corny, but like Emmett being this no-face NPC and being told he's a special only to find out it's not really a thing, but then he could fulfill it himself in his own way by being the master of his own destiny. I love that. About breaking the status quo, about reforming the mold in your own way. This movie has a great story with great characters to follow up with it. I thought all of the original characters in Lego Movie, when I saw them in the trailer, I thought that they'd be annoying, over the top, oh, this is stupid, quirky humor, here we go. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Again, I was wrong about Rango and I was wrong about Lego Movie. It's endearing, quick, clever, sharp writing, hilarious jokes, which I'm not too surprised when it comes to, Lord and Miller. Those guys tend to knock it out of the park when they work on projects. Warner Brothers, proving that they can still make a good animated film. And also, I thought that this was stop motion. I think a lot of people did. A lot of people still believe it is. That's all generated by computers. Like the bricks, the way they move, that's all animated. Not through stop motion, but through, that's constructed in a computer. That's great. Looks beautiful. Lots of great settings and backgrounds and the way they composite their shots to fit in these cities and different Lego builds. And the way the story uses the licenses that Lego owns or, signs up for, where you got like Lord of the Rings, Superman, Star Wars, Abraham Lincoln. This movie is just the definition of being sharp. Sharp visuals, sharp characters, sharp writing. It's just such a well-written and tight movie in its entirety. And the fact that, again, it wasn't just some glorified product placement. It was more than that. It was a movie first. And in that regard, it won me over, won a lot of people over, and saw it as more than just a commercial. And if anything, by taking the priority of being a movie first, it sold product. People were hooked on it, saying, wow, I love this movie. I wish there were some toys from the movie. Boom, there you go, done. There they are, enjoy. So yeah, I consider both the Lego Movie and Rango to be a tie. Sounds weird, no more ties going forward, but I truly couldn't decide for number 5, so that's my decision.
Hey guys, I think we're about to crash into the sun.
Who wants to see me do something really cool? Me.
Number 4, Klaus. Klaus came out in 2019 and was done by a studio called Spa Studios, stationed in Japan, not Japan, Spain. Sorry, got that wrong. I already said no anime. What am I talking about? So, yes, Klaus, Spa Studios in Spain, a project that has had a long journey to its completion. I remember seeing people post the 2D shots from this movie. I mean, the entire movie's in 2D. It's traditionally animated. I remember seeing the pencil animations for Jesper, for Klaus, and thinking, wow, that's a cool concept. Too bad it will never happen. Because I thought that this stuff was in the past. Again, computer animation rocked the last decade. 2D fell out of the mainstream eye, and moving throughout this decade, I thought that 2D animation could really never make a return because public opinion had shifted so hard to computer animation. I was wrong. Klaus proved that it could strut its stuff from an artistic point of view. It's gorgeous. The way that they do their texturing and do their lighting and using computers to help amplify the visuals from their traditional animation. It's some of the most gorgeous stuff I've seen from the industry. And again, proving that traditional animation is not lost. It can still be done and be successful and look as good as ever. Stuff that would make the masters of old say, wow, how'd you do that? I am hopeful that Klaus will launch a new trend for the next decade to see people return to traditional animation, but combine it with computer animation and open the door for the genre to return, but with a new coat of paint. Klaus as a story is also great. I think it'll be a film that I will watch every Christmas from now on. The story itself has fun characters, good jokes. As far as the story goes, it's cute. It's nothing too overly complicated. There were some parts I didn't really care for, but it's forgivable because I see the visuals from this film and I think this is more than enough. As long as you have a competent story and characters to follow, the visuals should be able to do the heavy lifting and convince people to watch this movie. Now, I know you shouldn't just depend on only animation to be your savior when it comes to winning people over to watch your film, but Klaus very much so deserves that. It makes a strong stand with the technical nature of how it was made. And again, the story itself is cute, fun, sharp writing as well. Some parts where it did kind of slack a bit, but the animation more than makes up for it. So Klaus, you deserve your spot. Hard road to completion, but you made it. I look forward to seeing what your studio does next. Number 3. Song of the Sea. So Song of the Sea came out in 2014 and was made by a studio called Cartoon Saloon, the same folks who did The Secret of Kells and The Breadwinner. I cried while watching this movie, which I don't do often. I get teary-eyed sometimes, but I straight up cried hard while watching this, and I'll tell you why in a moment. Also, I was on a plane when I watched this, so I was crying while, 35,000 feet in the air? Is that too high? Is that how high planes fly? I don't even know. Whatever, I was crying next to people on the plane, sniffling. I'm watching Song of the Sea. It's beautiful. Here, use my headphones. We can watch it together. Okay, whatever. Song of the Sea is unique for many reasons. The main reason being that it embraces Irish culture. You got Irish actors, accents, lore. You've got these designs to also complement it. Designs that are so beautiful in their shapes and how they present themselves. I know that sounds weird, but like when you see the settings in this movie and the way these characters are stylized in the world that they take place in, it's art. Straight up art. I think it's gorgeous. It's like seeing a painting in motion. The story itself is one about loss, with a family that lost their mother, a husband who lost his wife, how the main character is this little boy who lost his mom and thinks that his little sister is to blame for it, and how he resents her, and how this story unwinds to be a story of how a family sticks together in the midst of crazy fantasy things going down. I'm so hesitant going into detail about this one because I feel that Song of the Sea isn't as well known as like Disney films, DreamWorks, Illumination, so it can be a treat if you haven't seen it. Like, I don't want to spoil it. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's gorgeous. The colors, the palette, the color palette, the designs, of course, like I said, the story in general being one that's quite emotional and very well done. It's a movie that I wish more people knew of. And honestly, go check it out. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. You'll see what I'm talking about. This is a movie that came from a smaller studio, but had a ton of heart, a ton of talent, and embraced how different it wanted to be with its story and designs and the narrative it wanted to tell. It absolutely earns a spot on my list. Number 2, Zootopia. Shut up, Race. When it comes to Disney and their films, they have this tendency to either do a princess film or something completely different. Tangled for princess films, Wreck-It Ralph. And Zootopia falls into the Wreck-It Ralph category. It's not based on an existing property, it's completely new. And that excited me. I like seeing new things that are like, again, 100% original. Because more often than not, things are based on books and movies and TV shows and comics and whatnot. Zootopia was unique, 100% unique, and that got me pumped up. I remember seeing the trailers, I thought, oh, it looks cute, looks fun, looks well made, I wanna see it. I was there opening night, I watched it, I loved it. I love this film. I appreciate that this film has a story that is not pandering to children, but at the same time, not exclusive to mature audiences either. It got it right with the mixture of a serious tone, but also having fun with the universe it exists in. Which, by the way, as you all know, I love Anther Designs, and Zootopia is one of the best examples of that. You have this story of predators versus prey and how they evolved past it, how they've become better and have united as a society to where they can put their past behind them. And Judy Hopps, being the main character, she grew up with the idea that Zootopia is the culmination of a better society and how she wants to be part of that and defend that notion. She has stars in her eyes throughout her entire life, an iron will to follow through just to get to Zootopia and realize that it's not what she thought it would be. But she's too stubborn to give up on it, still wants to follow her dreams, gets caught up in this adventure, being a detective, joining up with Nick the Fox, how you got the straight-laced, optimistic bunny, and the more pessimistic fox who's street smart. And it's a good combo. They have great chemistry as characters. I absolutely love the setting that is the city. It's one of the best set designs I've ever seen in animation. Like, go back and watch the film. Look at the big, long shots of the city itself and see how it's divided and how unique each section is. Sahara Square, Tundra Town, the Rainforest District, to name a few, whatever. I've watched this film a lot, I can quote it. But you get this sense of how detailed and also how well this city functions with, like, wow, they actually have these giant snow like engines to generate ice and these giant like heaters for the desert for each different unique like ecosystem for these animals. It's brilliant. You can tell these folks who made the movie did their homework and then some. And then, of course, the way that this narrative explains itself with the defeat of Judy kind of falling into this rut of thinking that predators are inherently evil. And because she stands up at the beginning thinking, okay, no, I believe in this idea that we're more than what we think we are, that prey and predators aren't just biological monsters, they can be better than that. And there are two moments in this movie that give me chills, two of my favorite moments from cinema ever. Nick standing up to BOGO for Judy. That was a great turning point for Nick as a character to show that he actually has a heart and has begun to care for Judy and her plight. And then, of course, the part where Gideon, the bully at the start, apologizes to Judy. That moment was so cathartic to me, as weird as that sounds. To see this guy who was a bully, went off into his own direction in life, probably had his own trials and tribulations that we don't see on screen, realizes how terrible of a person he was, and how he spoke to Judy and said, I was a real jerk, I apologize. That moment was so real. I'm getting chills just talking about it, because you can see how remorseful he is. And that was great development. And that was a moment that Judy really needed to hear, that her parents had come around, that Gideon had come around. These people that were there at the start of her life that kind of put her down, turned around on their own accord. And that gave her the hope to go back and make things right in Zootopia. That was a beautiful moment. These characters are so well done, well written. Their dialogue is fantastic as well. Great jokes. beautiful details in the animation with the nose twitches and the tails and how they move around. Zootopia is quality through and through. I can watch it a million times, and I probably will before I die. And it very much so deserves number 2 on my list. There's only one other movie that defeats it just by enough, and I think you all might know what I'm talking about. But before we get to that point, let's talk about honorable mentions, which I don't have that many listed. I know that Paleo is doing his own top list for best animated movies from this past decade. So go check out his video if you want to watch more. Some of the honorable mentions to me being Toy Story 3, Inside Out, Kung Fu Panda 2. And also, I want to give a shout out to this short from the Pixar shorts program. It's called Kit Bull. Once more, I do not cry often while watching movies or shows. Kit Bull made me weep, as in I openly cried hard, ugly cried while watching that short. I had to pause it to dry my tears. And I think it's because, again, I resonate with the topic matter of animals, and I'm very much so against animal abuse. For those who follow me on Twitter, you guys know I love my dog, and I think that hit a particular heartstring that just devastated me in a good way while watching the short. I mean, and outside of that, Kit Bull's also very well designed. Great little story with cute characters and one with a happy ending. I'm actually getting teary-eyed just thinking about it. I'm gonna move on. But Kit Bull, I love you. That was a great short. There's plenty of other great shorts from this past decade. I know that there was that recent one from Sony, I believe, about a father and his daughter with doing the hair of his daughter. I forget the name of the short, but that was another newcomer here at the very end of the decade. Check that one out too. But speaking of Sony, let's talk about my number 1 choice of the best animated film from this past decade. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna cut right to it. The Emoji Movie. Nah, I'm just joking. Boss Baby. So Boss Baby is, okay, I'm just joking. Spider-Verse. I was late to the party when it came to Spider-Verse. I saw a lot of hype. I saw a lot of people on my Twitter and on YouTube talking about how groundbreaking this film was. And it took me about a month to actually see it. And I thought by that time, the hype will have died down. Any kind of stars in my eyes about how good this movie could be would have dissolved. And I would see the movie for what it is. I did, and it was fucking amazing. So Spider-Verse did something that is incredibly important to me when it comes to making a good movie. Give me a character to care about. Give me a character to follow and to see how they begin, the journey of them to that conclusion, and how they change. And I know, again, that's kind of basic storytelling 101, but you'd be surprised how many movies miss that mark. Miles is a fantastic main character. I love how unsure he is at the beginning, how he's thrown into the beast that is the Spider-Verse, how he's playing catch up, how he's trying to fill in the shoes and wear the mask of Spider-Man, but he's just a kid playing catch up, and he's so lost in it all. But that beginning led to one of my favorite moments in cinema ever, and that's when Miles finally becomes Spider-Man. The way that he not even falls, but rises to the occasion and fulfills himself as, I know who I am now. I have the confidence to face my challenges. That moment, mwah, chef kiss. Beautiful. I love it. And the way this movie has its visuals, where it's a pseudo comic, gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. I know some folks didn't like the frame rate. They didn't like the fuzziness around it. I thought it was stylized in a way that was just unlike anything else. Again, like Zootopia, Sony and the folks involved in the production for this movie did their homework, had a clear vision of what they wanted to do from a story, character, visual point of view, and they succeeded 100%. And they also have fun with the multiverse aspect of it all, which can get confusing. The larger a story gets, the more difficult it becomes to keep it all corralled. But here it works. The different Spider-Men, the way that they all have parallels but also feel unique as characters. This movie, Spider-Verse, succeeded in that regard too. Everything, dialogue, characters, the way that these characters grow throughout the movie. By the way, Peter B. Parker is one of my favorite animated characters ever. I rarely cosplay. Check it out. I dressed up as him at a convention. Hahaha, that's me. Yeah, that's what I look like. Just overall a movie that fires off on all cylinders. Like, as you all know, I got my 5 points. Story, dialogue, voice acting, editing, and animation. Spider-Verse knocks them all out of the park. And it becomes like more of a chore to look through this movie and say, what did it do wrong? Because in my eyes, it's basically a perfect film. I can watch it a million times. It's gorgeous, it's beautiful. There's a lot of it going on in the background. As I mentioned with Lego Movie, Phil Lord and Chris Miller worked on this. Those guys can do no wrong in my eyes. Well, they can, but more often than not, they do right. So Spider-Verse, #1 pick, amazing film. I know folks hype it up. I know a lot of folks will also be picking it as their #1 film, but rightfully so. It deserves the spot. And I think it was one of the coolest redemption stories for Sony to go from the Emoji Movie to this. So Sony, please keep forward on that path. I want to see more from you from this realm of quality. So keep it up.
Hey.
Oh, by the way, real fast, as far as live action goes, biggest disappointment this decade for me, the Hobbit trilogy. Talk about a disaster. Could have been good, they failed, and that bummed me out. Best movie as far as live action goes, for me, personally, Mad Max Fury Road. I want to do a video essay about that in the future. It's kind of hard to do that on my kind of channel, but I might take a crack at it. That film is so amazing with its action, characters, how it's a chase that becomes a race. What a unique setting with this like apocalyptic realm. I loved it. Man, I'm having a hard time picking it over Spider-Verse as far as like my single favorite film from this past decade. I don't know, a tie, perhaps. But yeah, that's my list. Tell me down below in the comments what your personal favorites were from this past decade. Once more, this is just my subjective list. There's no single list that's considered the perfect de facto list. We all have our own opinions, so share it down below in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.